Servus and hello, Matthias here, and this is Singletrack. Today, we are continuing our summer mountain adventure celebration. This time we travel to Utah to meet up with Christopher Fisher, inspired by Jason Hardrath to take a serious look at the famous WURL, the Wasatch Ultimate Ridge Linkup. Chris and Jason embarked on something no one had completed or even attempted before. The incredible double WURL. WURL is a mountain route above Salt Lake City that's roughly 36 miles with 18,000 feet of vert. There's scrambling, boulder hopping, and barely a few rugged trails. It's gnarly, it's epic, and Chris did the double. Let's hear from Chris and let him share this epic story. Christopher, thank you so much for coming on Singletrack, being in the house, well, virtually in the house, so to speak. You reached out on Instagram with an absolutely amazing project, and I had to learn all about it. So let's chat about it. Where are you at right now?
Right now, I'm in Jackson Hole, Wyoming.
So you're in Jackson Hole. You are over there in the Rockies, far away from me, far away in a sense that I've not spent hardly any time over there. Is that...
No way.
Yeah, it's like one of those things. You come over from Germany, you get stuck here, work, family, life, right? And then...
You do have the Cascades there, too, so that's not too bad.
I mean, that's the thing, right? I mean, it's not like I'm lacking on playgrounds.
No, for sure.
But so you have to paint me a little bit of a picture. Are those your usual stomping grounds over there? Is that what you call home? Give us a little bit of a picture. Okay.
So Jackson Hole's pretty new to me. I've only spent maybe a week here all together in the past since I've been living in the mountains. But just Saturday I ran a race, the Circuit Series Grand Targhee race, and I decided, why not stick around and do a few extra things. And so the day after, I went on a nice run with a friend, and we did some mushroom hunting. That was pretty awesome up in Cascade area, or Cascade, I forget the name, somewhere in the Tetons, somewhere in the park. She showed me the spots, and we picked mushrooms and berries and had a great time. The next day, ran up the Grand Teton with a buddy, went back down that. We soloed the OS route for my first time. That was super fun. Really stoked to be able to stand up on the Teton. The next day, yesterday, we did Tiwanaut, which is another pretty big one. It was like 5.5K straight up, another scramble. Pretty fun.
Yeah.
And then today, to wrap up my days in the Tetons, I ran from Teton Pass to Jackson Hole Tram. So that was like another solid day linking some mountains together,
Nice.
So, I don't really spend a lot of time here. So I was excited to get out and do the Teton things,
Yeah. So, if I'm sort of trying to decipher this, do you see yourself more as a trail runner who tries to find mountains, or are you seeing yourself more as a mountaineer, mountain climber who tries to be fast? Where could you kind of see your comfort level?
I've definitely started in the trail running scene. So, the single track aspect of trails was what I, got drawn into when I first moved to the mountains. And since then, I've been in the mountains for 3 years now. So since then, it's kind of evolved from trail running to really linking up big mountains and just kind of staying along ridge lines, scrambling, and doing the mountaineering thing. Really stoked about getting more into the mountaineering aspect, like doing big alpine adventures like the double WURL or whatever, stuff like that, and climbing the Grand. So, yeah, I would say I definitely was more of been more of a trail runner that's kind of evolved into this big mountain link-up runner.
That's an interesting place to be in, because in my sort of friend base and people I know, trail runners sort of come from two different worlds. We've got the trail runners that were cross-country runners in high school and college, right? And they jump into trail running because it offers them, a much larger playground than, especially as they get older, trying to chase a Boston cutoff and still trying to play on that marathon sort of circuit. But they often are very, very hesitant once the trail gets scrambly, gets steeper, right? And I mean, yeah, if you're not comfortable in this kind of terrain, then you find yourself very quickly turned around, right? Wherein
Yeah.
you say you're a trail runner, but the mountains and sort of these exposed areas is your comfort zone.
Yeah, I definitely excel in more of the not into the off trail mountain running aspect, scrambling, the whole 9 yards. I can run trails really well, but I really find myself more passionate about being off trail, connecting ridge lines and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And that's where I excel for sure.
So you just said that this weekend you did one of the Cirque Series races. That is then not really your focus.
No, I've ran 3 this year. I ran 5 last year. It's kind of like the series that kind of put light on the things I'm doing. And so there's a couple of the courses that kind of correspond with the things that I do. And it's fun to go out and run fast. I'm one of the top fastest downhillers in these series. Uphill, it's real running. They're running up roads for the most part, like a fire road to the top of the hill with a little bit of scramble. And so it's definitely not my thing. It's so fun. I love being around the people in the community and the vibes that it gives off, and it's a really good time. But I'm definitely more into the bigger, longer adventures, overnight things, 24-hour plus, 40 miles, linking up big mountains. That's kind of more been my focus for sure.
Yeah, and I think there is sort of a philosophical difference between mountaineers who go out and are comfortable by themselves in these exposed places versus putting on a bib with 500 other runners and sort of waiting for a gun and then say, now you can go, right? I mean, it's great. There is no judgment here, right?
For sure.
We all fit under the same umbrella, but it's a completely different philosophical approach to being outdoors.
100%. I can agree more.
Yeah. So give people who are not familiar with the Cirque series a little bit of a kind of an overview of what is it? Because it's kind of unique. And I've just listened to a podcast that I had seen the website, but it sort of introduced me to the entire concept of the Cirque series.
Yeah.
Right? Because, it's something that isn't really on the radar, but it is growing and it is fun.
It's growing real fast. It's now becoming I think it's the premier mountain running series in America now, because there's 6 races in America and it's usually based around a resort. So there's one at Alta in Utah, Snowbird in Brighton. All 3 of those are Utah. There's one here at Grand Targhee in Wyoming, one at Alyeska in Alaska, and then one at A Basin over in Colorado. And pretty much it's like a short course. It's anywhere from 5 to 8 miles. With anywhere from 2,000 to 4,000 feet of climbing and descent. And so it's a really fast bang for your buck. There's 300 to 500 other like-minded folk that want to come climb a mountain that they probably wouldn't climb on their own, and so it gets a lot of people out of their comfort zone where they can go push themselves, with a lot of other people and in a safe environment in a sense. Yeah, it's you fall on the rocks, you're going to get hurt, but there's people around, the stoke is high. Mm-hmm. Everybody's having a good time.
Yeah, it is an interesting thing from a business point of view. It's super smart because with temperatures rising on the planet, ski resorts are looking for 4-season activities, right? And one of the big challenges is that we have, especially over here in North America, is getting permits for commercial endeavors. Like you can't do it in national parks and stuff like that, right? Wilderness areas. And so utilizing ski resorts that have the infrastructure there is a total win-win. You have the parking areas and everything, and they know how to run a business and make this work for hundreds of people. Yeah, exactly.
It's much easier than, finding all the permits and all the people you need to make this happen elsewhere because the resort already has it all,
Yeah. And the unique aspect, and that's the thing that, especially in the trail running world, because of Western states being sort of this premier race, I think we've anchored trail around the ultra aspect and have always thought of it as being a super long distance endeavor. But these races being short distances is absolutely an incredible invitation for a lot more people to come out and enjoy something, right?
Yeah, Julian Carr's the guy that started the whole thing, and he's just done a really good job at getting people in that would want to do something shorter, still be on a trail potentially, and actually get like a little bit of the mountain aspect more so than a long distance trail, like you were saying. So it's really cool, and it brings together a really unique community.
Yes, it's interesting that you found this as an enjoyment when you yourself sort of go for more these sort of bigger adventures, right? Because it is sort of, I mean, how long does something like that take? Couple hours, 3-4 hours or something like that, depending how fast one is with the climb.
You are, yeah.
Right.
I think the 3 that I've done this year have been all less than an hour 10. And so pretty quick.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm usually top 15 out of the whole crowd. So it's like, I'm not crazy fast, but I'm not, in the back of the pack. But it's not about that, For the most part, unless you're like one of the top 5 runners who's really competing, it's all about being there for the fun of it and just be able to share them out with other people.
Yeah. And then having the beer garden at the bottom, right? I mean, there is an aspect of, as you're saying, celebrating the community more so or just as much as the sort of physical activity. And
for
stuff.
Sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Well, cool. So that you did, and it was super important for me to kind of highlight it because this is just this new facet or different facet of sort of this trail running thing. But the reason why we are chatting is because of the project that you just completed. And I had heard about this project as a route, not the double that you did, but I had heard about the route in its existence, and so we probably need to start there and give people sort of an idea what is that WURL thing, right? I mean, because it's sort of iconic, newish still, because these summit link-ups on that level is sort of a new thing, right? But already sort of iconic.
Yeah, man. So the WURL was established by Jared Campbell back in, I think, 2002 or something like that. That's kind of when he came up with the idea. And it stands for the Wasatch Ultimate Ridge Linkup. And so long story short, you start at Ferguson Canyon typically, and you circumnavigate the entire little Cottonwood Canyon over there in the Wasatch. Tagging, I think it's like 25 peaks, maybe, something like that. It's give or take a couple peaks. And so you circumnavigate, and then you finish down Bell's Canyon. So you're pretty much starting in Salt Lake, going 6,500 feet up, and then hitting the ridge line all the way around. The majority of the ridge line is class 3, maybe some class 4, maybe a couple class 5 moves, depending on what you want to do and like how, crazy you want to get with it. You can definitely make it as technical as you want. It's very exposed. You fall, you might really regret it and might not even remember it because you might die.
Yeah.
There's been a few deaths up there. I don't know the exact number. I think it's like 2 or 3, maybe 4. Several search and rescue, people that had to get rescued off the peaks. But yeah, it's pretty technical and exposed. And I mean, it's not just a regular old hike or regular old trail run, it's definitely more of a climbing, like ultra climbing route in a sense.
Mm-hmm. Well, and what makes routes like these interesting and sort of an exciting sort of new focus for trail runners / mountaineers is that by connecting multiple peaks, you are going off of a non-obvious route, right?
Yeah.
I mean, a normal hiking trail or normal climbing route, you might get a few sections of it, but the normal hiker climber has one objective, which is just one summit and then back down, right? But by doing this ridge link up, you are sort of going up one side and going down the other side. So you are mostly going off the beaten path, right?
Yeah, it's pretty much all off the beaten path. There's like maybe 10 miles that's kind of has a trail on it, maybe something like that, but not a lot of it. Most of it's pretty much like, oh, I'm on this mountain, then you look forward and there's the next one, and you kind of just find your way to the next one and do that all the way around the horseshoe of Little Cottonwood.
Yeah. So you said how many summits are you tagging?
It's like 24, 25, I believe. I could be wrong by a peak or two. I would have to look it up. I forgot.
No, exactly. So we've got 20-some summits. So the one loop is how many miles?
It's roughly 35, 36 miles and about 18 to 20,000 feet of elevation gain loss.
Okay. So Jared Campbell, well known in the area there, and obviously well regarded as a trail runner who's never really made a name for himself at races, but always sort of in this zone of what is there beyond races, right? So he establishes that route and whets the appetite, and people are saying, okay, that's something that I can do. That's something that is reasonable. That's sort of a new storyline. He has a website where he sort of lays out the objective and tracks.
He tracks everybody that's done it and stuff like that. And it's around like 175 plus or minus some that, probably don't submit their WURLs. But yeah, it's probably around 175 or 200 people that have, finished it.
Okay. So you know about this. And so you decide that you want to do the double. The out and back.
Yeah, out and back.
Right? So, how do you go from, to kind of walk us from, okay, I know this thing exists, to I'm going to be the first one who does an out and back on this?
Yeah, so do you know Jason Hardrath?
Yes.
Yeah, so he kind of inspired the idea a lot. We actually attempted it together, and I'll get more into what happened with that. And I'm sure you've read about it a little bit. But, he saw me playing around the Wasatch probably a month and a half prior, maybe a month prior. And he's like, hey, man, I've been thinking about doing this thing, the WURL. Thinking about doing an out and back on it. No one's done it yet. And I was like, no way. I was literally like bullshitting with some friends the other day about maybe wanting to potentially throw that idea out there. And they're like, no, dude, that's crazy. No one's doing that. And so he said that to me. And I was like, well, obviously we got to do it together. So it was like probably 1 month of chatting about it. And then we finally just were like, all right, I got these dates. Let's meet out there and let's give it a go. And that's kind of how it got brought up. For him, it's been something he's thought about for some time, I think.
Yeah. I am amazed by this because I don't know. I'm somebody who is, I don't know, perhaps I'm older, but I feel I'm very slow and deliberate. And my friends make fun of me. I get these ideas and then I toss them around. And by me saying that I'm tossing around, that can sometimes be years before I finally get to it. And sometimes
I hear you.
Distraction, professional life and everything, right? But it's like to get an idea and then saying, well, a month and let's attempt it is crazy to me. I mean, it's fascinating. I love it. So you talked to Jason. You've obviously, from a technical point of view, from a research point of view, you're familiar with these peaks in some respects, right?
We were familiar in the sense that we knew it was mostly class 3, class 4 in the technical sections. Besides that, we didn't go out and rehearse any of the technical sections. Most people that do the WURL, they're rehearsing each section. There's thirds, kind of 3 different pieces that people usually go out and rehearse. We didn't rehearse any of it. I've stood on 3 of the peaks before, and I've been on the middle section that has mostly trail, which is very obvious route finding. But that was all before I even thought about doing this. And so it wasn't really in the mindset of, I'm up here to learn the WURL. Yeah, we didn't go rehearse any of it. Actually, whenever Jason started walking up the mountain, that was his first time ever walking on a mountain in the Wasatch.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, Jason is a beast, right? He is something else in terms of skill and experience. And I mean, he knows
what he's doing.
He really knows what he's doing. Absolutely. And I mean, I think that there are a couple components to this. You need to have the climbing chops, the experience to be able to say, okay, I'm reading a trip report. This is class 3 climbing. I'm comfortable with that. I can do this, right?
Yeah.
And then okay, this is that many miles. I can consider my stamina and whatever. I'll be able to handle that, right? But then there's the other part, which is the logistics of it all, right? And that is, where are the water sources? How do you refuel? Is somebody meeting you halfway for certain routes, right? So let's speak a little bit about the logistics. Because that ends up being 60 plus miles if you do out and back. That will take you a few hours. That's not just something that you can do off of 2 soft flasks and a goo, right?
No. Yeah, it was. Yeah, let's talk about it. So we just shot out to Salt Lake. We were like, yo, we have like 2 days to get prepared, and the weather window is giving us about 72 hours to go for it. And we called up a couple buddies that I knew and started chatting with them about it. And, there's like 3 or 4 really good spots to bring stuff in on the WURL. So we went fully supported. We didn't do self-supported, unsupported. We went fully supported. We got a support crew together. We put together a team of like 10 people maybe within 24 hours, and half the people we've never met before, like face to face besides Instagram messages. And so it was really cool that people like the community came out to come help this project. We could have probably figured it out ourselves, self-supported wise, and brought the caches up. It would have been a much harder effort doing it that way though. And so pretty much after the first big stretch of technical piece, there's a real easy hike in, maybe a mile and a half with like 1,000 feet. We had 2 guys come up, drop the cache there, and another one about 10 miles further. And then at the top of the Snowbird Tram, there was a small cache with food, water, all we needed. And then we had people meet us up on Viperhorn, which is like the last real good entrance before the last about 10 to 12 miles. Last technical piece of the route too. So yeah, we had like 4 different cache spots. People were at most of them. There was a couple where they just dropped the cache. We showed up, did our thing, and kept going. Yeah.
So that's super cool, right? That shows that the community comes out to projects like this, right? And it's weird. We all live busy lives. You sometimes feel weird about like sort of asking for help because you're the one who gets to run it. They're the ones who drop off a cache, right? They're not really getting credit for doing anything special, right? But being part of something actually does create excitement for you.
It does.
Right? And so there is a surprising willingness to actually help, even though we are not really knocking on our neighbor's door and asking for sugar anymore. And, right?
For sure. And it was super cool that the community showed up. And like, if you read any of my posts, I shine light on every single person that came out and helped, because we wouldn't have been able to do it the way we did without all these people that came out. And even the ones that couldn't, that wanted to be there, they showed support through messages, through Instagram, text, the whole thing. There was support the entire way. I mean, it was pretty unbelievable, honestly.
Yeah. Well, fantastic. That's incredible. So you have everything lined up. You show up at the trailhead. You don't really, if you have a good weather window, you don't really have to worry about if you start in the morning or in the evenings, right? You take it as it comes. When nightfall comes, right? You've got headlamps and you keep going, right? So let's hop on the trail. Walk us through a little bit.
Yeah, dude. So we woke up around 10 p.m.-ish to, get our stuff ready to go to the trail. And we showed up at the trail right around 11:50 and started walking right at midnight. Not a second later. Midnight hit. We started walking. Man, we were stoked.
And you chose midnight because?
Weather windows. So for midnight, we had roughly 60 solid hours that we knew would be pretty decent before the storms were coming, and the storms were coming either way. So we had like about a 60-hour window that we gave ourselves.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Okay, good. So you didn't spend waste any money on extra sleep. You were hitting the trail.
Didn't do that.
Yeah, right.
Talk about that in a little bit.
Okay, perfect. All right, so midnight start. You get going.
Uh-huh.
Give us a little bit of experience. I've driven through the Wasatch little bit, but I've not spent any time. How is the rock? How is the trail? You're above tree line. It's fairly dry, right?
Yeah, it took us probably 4,000 feet, 5,000 feet of elevation gain before we hopped above tree line. Super dry. It it rained the day or two before that, but it did stick around, so it dries out really quick. Just super quiet, very very chill. Me and Jason are kind of chatting, but keeping it to a minimum because we have a big climb ahead. Every 2,000 feet, we kind of had a celebration. Like, yeah, man, 2,000 feet up, we got 2 more of these before we hit the first peak, because the first 6,500 is like the first big push, kind of big chunk of vert out of the way. But super, super calm. And, behind us, you turn around, you can just see Salt Lake, all the lights up, and we're just, every step get further and further away from the city. And it was super cool to, like, watch that through the canyon from Ferguson, like turning around and just watching it get further and further back. It's like gets more and more real. Like we're headed out. This is about to be good.
There is something really special and unique about nighttime travel, right? It's you sort of your senses are completely heightened because in some respects you see not in some respects you see less, right?
Yeah.
You focus on your headlamp. It's a really unique and special time to be out in the mountains.
It's pretty awesome, man. Night travel is not a lot of people do it, and people that do, they understand it. It's just much calmer. It's cooler, and it's like you said, everything's more heightened, so you're more aware of everything. You get to look at the stars if you want. I mean, there's just a lot kind of going on, so it's a different aspect of walking around the mountains. It's pretty awesome.
So, aside from the incoming storm, because you immediately set off to do a out and back, you weren't really chasing a time, right? It was about completion in that sense. So you weren't really feeling under the gun, right?
We're feeling under the gun. We're keeping a casual pace, just keeping an aerobic pace, not trying to push it too crazy because we know how fast or how far we have to go. Like we said, no one's done it before. We just wanted to go establish it so someone else, if they want to, can come in and do it, 20 hours faster or whatever. But yeah, we had an idea. We thought we were going to shoot for about 24 hours for each lap. That didn't happen. That didn't happen. It was weird. So, if you follow along a little bit, Jason just got off doing the Norman's 13 and then the California Human Powered right after that, like a part of that. That was 12 days before this double whirl, and his body was not ready, which we found out about halfway through the first whirl. We had a couple chats. He was moving pretty slow. I was moving at his pace, obviously, but feeling really good, knowing I could go faster without putting much more effort into it. And so we had the chat about halfway through our first whirl he was like, yeah, man, just wanted to let you know, like, obviously I'm going slow and I'm feeling it. I just got off this effort 12 days ago, and I was like, yeah, man, I get it. Like, I'm here to do it with you as a team. That's what we came out here to do. We're doing it as a team. So I'm not in a rush. We're chilling. Well, that changed.
It's a really important and tough conversation and sort of decision making, right? Because it's safer to be together, but it's not necessarily safe to drag somebody along for too long. And if they feel like they're just doing you a favor and they shouldn't be out there. So there are lots of components that you sort of need to put on the table.
Very interesting. And when we had that chat, we were still moving at like maybe a 26, 28 hour pace. And it just kind of got slower and slower as the day progressed. And then the next night number 2 came, and it got pretty slow. The stoke was high. I was super stoked. Like everything was going great. I felt great. Didn't have any kind of problems. Jason was hurting. It was very obvious. He told me I knew. But we never had the conversation about, hey, man, maybe I should go by myself. That was not really in the cards. So we kept pushing. Once we got, we go through.
Before you keep going, that wasn't in the cards because you felt like you set out as a team. It's the fair thing to do.
Yeah, it was more so his idea than mine. Mine was kind of like just a play idea at the time. I was just like throwing it out at some friends. And so he had the idea, and like, we really wanted to connect over a project like this. We didn't really have to rush too bad because we had 60 hours before the storms, right? And so it was kind of like, yeah, man, we're just going to do this together. That's the idea. There was no like, we're going to, crush it and just go as fast as possible. It was, we're going to keep a cool pace, to where we're both feeling good. But our paces were not aligned. And the answer to that is obvious. Like the dude just did a 500 mile week on foot and by 12 days prior. So it's like, obviously there's going to be a little bit of a difference.
Right. No, but it makes sense. But at least it wasn't that, one person got injured or anything like that, right?
Exactly.
I mean, it was really just exhaustion, and you sort of had to then come up, well, how we going to continue this.
Pretty much.
You did, and Jason did make it to the finish of one loop, correct?
He did, which was still remarkable because the guy's never stepped on a foot in the Wasatch Mountains before ever. So it's like, he did a whirl without ever seeing any of it. Yeah, we had a pacer for like the last 10 miles, and she showed us most of the way through the night. But still, it's doing the whirl is pretty awesome. It's pretty big.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's big. It's really cool.
No, absolutely. It's so. I'm trying to get into your head, right? But you're saying that it was sort of Jason's idea, and he spun it up, and you went along. At what point did you sort of feel like, I want to make this my project?
I never really had those thoughts. When we were coming down Bell's Canyon, next morning she comes up, the second sunrise, I'm like, dude, we're moving so slow. The first whirl took 32 and a half hours. I got down an hour earlier. We got to the trail where there's finally kind of a trail. It's like a boulder field trail, so it's not like the best trail, but it's a trail. And so I told him and Anna, I'm going to run down, go lay down for a little bit. He was cool with it because why would one person get less rest because the other person can't go as fast, when we only have 4 miles left of the first one. And so I went down, did my thing out. And when I got down, there was like 3 friends there. They're all good friends. And I was kind of mentally down because I knew how fast we were moving and I knew how soon the storms were coming the next day. And so I was just telling everybody, like, yeah, man, I don't think it's going to happen. Like the way we're moving together as a team, I just don't think it's going to happen. And never once in my mind did I have the thought of, I need to go on by myself, because I figured we're doing this as a team. And so, I laid down for maybe 45 minutes. Jason gets down and he starts talking. He's like, yeah, man, I've had a lot of time to think to myself in the past 45 minutes. And I think it's better if you go on by yourself because you have a chance to beat the storms with the way you can move. And obviously I'm moving much slower. And so like when I heard that, it wasn't really a thought in my mind beforehand. I was like smacked with something brand new. I was like, oh, no shit.
Mm-hmm.
Really, I need to go by myself. And it made sense. And I knew that, but like I said, I was there to do it as a team.
Right.
And so it was never like a part of my mindset of thinking, yeah, I'm going to go by myself.
Yeah. And you didn't feel any hesitation or let me rephrase that. How did you feel about this offer, looking at an incoming storm and having to do all of these peaks that you've just done solo, but in reverse by the time you reach them again, especially the places that you haven't been, it's like, how much do you really remember? So yeah. From a technical piece, did you feel comfortable with that?
So there's one piece in the night on Bighorn, which is the second to last peak before we got down to the finish of the first whirl. And there was the face we went up, man, was more technical than we had to go. And we were just following our friend. And so I was really nervous about having to down climb that. And like when I started thinking about doing that by myself, I was like, I'm real nervous. Like didn't think it was I was like kind of psyching myself out in a way. And once we got back to it, it ended up being like a much easier down way. There was like a real easy way to get down it. And so, yeah, I just started worrying about that one piece. That was the only part I was kind of hesitant about.
Yeah.
And then obviously going by myself. But fortunately, I didn't have to go by myself.
All right. So you get you get confronted, you get offered this opportunity of doing it by yourself. You hadn't really played with it. You're thinking about it. You weighing the potential challenges, but you end up not having to do it by yourself.
Yeah. And so before we got to the point of having a pacer, Jason was kind of like, he said, go slay the dragon. And we had a really good talk about like the hero's journey, several nights prior before we did the WURL. And so once he said that, I knew I had to go do this. I was like, yeah, man, you're right. I mean, I've got nothing else going on today, and that's what we were planning on doing. So I guess I'm just going to go back and do it again. But, I was really nervous to do it by myself. I accepted that I was going to do it by myself if I had to. And then I started reaching out to a few people on Instagram that I've never met before, but I knew that were potentially able to come help. And so I reached out to this dude named Brian, and the day prior, he just did the Cottonwood Traverse, which is like the first technical section of the WURL. And so he was like, yeah, man, I don't think I can do it. I don't think I can come pace right now. I'm pretty beat from yesterday. And then I was like, all right, I gave him all hopes. I was like, this not happening. I'm going by myself. So I laid down for like maybe 30 more minutes to kind of rest my eyes and just like kind of get my mind straight before, going back into the solo. And I wake up to a text. When I wake up, open my eyes. I didn't really fall asleep. But I opened my eyes to a text from him saying, hey, man, I'm actually on the way. I got all my stuff ready to rock and roll. And I was like, no way, dude. And so the stoke was immediately very high. I was hyped. I hopped out of my truck. The four buddies are sitting there. Jason's sitting there. I'm like, yeah, guys, I found someone going with me, man. I'm stoked. And everything in my body that hurt didn't hurt anymore. Everything that was tired wasn't tired. I felt like I didn't even do a whole whirl. I just a flip switch, and I was ready to do it again.
I mean, on one side, obviously, this is excitement and adrenaline, right?
Yeah.
But on the other side, it was kind of nice. People say if you run marathons, you're supposed to be going negative splits, right? You're supposed to be reserving your energy for the second half, and you actually inadvertently did, right?
Yeah.
So you were sort of ready for more. You weren't already completely beat. And so, there's a whole nother aspect that who's spent no time in Salt Lake, am fascinated by hearing how close these mountains are, right? In many other areas, if you reach out to someone, number one, you even had cell coverage, but it's like, yeah, I can be there in 6 hours.
Yeah.
Somebody to be able to jump in and meet you on such short notice is incredible.
It was awesome. And he really brought the stoked factor. I was stoked. Everybody was stoked. So I spent, while he was on the way for the next 35 minutes or whatever, I just started getting my stuff together and like changing socks, changing clothes, just doing everything, Wish I had my toothbrush. Didn't.
This is not the first time I hear this, especially on this like really long efforts, right? I've seen like runners on trail races leaving the aid stations and they're brushing their teeth after a morning. Like, that's smart. That gives you really nice, fresh feeling.
It's a thing for sure.
Yeah. Well, cool. So he shows up and you're ready to rock. You're fully regrouped, and then you decided to do this thing backwards.
Yeah. I looked at Joe, who was our crew chief support guy. Said, yeah, man, I got nothing else to do today. Let's do this thing. And we just started walking up the trail. Sure enough, I forgot like 2 or 3 different things that I realized like a quarter mile in. And so Brian, ran back down, grabbed those things for me. Because I was so stoked and like just all over the place. I, forgot a couple of things that were kind of important.
That's amazing. Well, I'm still absolutely fascinated by your entire crew and your ability to kind of rally people to support you in this way on such a short notice. This is truly an incredible team effort, right?
It was an incredible team effort. The role these people played, man, was huge, and just the inspiring company, that's being around people that really wanted to be there.
Mm-hmm.
It was next level vibes. It was awesome.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. So now you've got a new partner. So, the mood changes, right? The conversations change. It's almost like you're going on a second trip, but the clock's still running in a sense, right?
Yeah, it's just a whole new just another hike or something.
Yeah, another hike. Well, cool. Well, you're familiar with the terrain at this point, but you know, so walk me through the second half.
Yeah, man. We're headed up Bell's Canyon. We finally break through off the trail. We find just a beaten like deer trail or something, kind of like a game trail, and it leads us straight to the boulder field. We bypass most of the boulder field that we had to go down. And going up in the light, it's just like it was so much easier than going down. We didn't have to bushwhack at all, which there was some bushwhacking coming out of the canyon, getting down to the trail. And it was just super simple. It was like flow state. We just kept going, and like we saw the notch. So the notch off of Lone Peak, you have to run down. It's like maybe 1,000 feet straight down, like a really steep, loose rock chute, pretty much, And we went straight up it. It was cake on the way up compared to the down. You just, hike up with your poles. But it was super straightforward. It was really warm. We started at like 10 o'clock in the morning, so we were getting ready to hit the heat. Before we got up to the notch, there was one more creek. I laid down and it got my entire body wet and cold, and it worked for a couple hours. But yeah, man, we're headed back. Me and him are together for probably the next 9.5 hours until we get to Firehorn. And so, like what I was saying earlier, I was nervous about that down climb off of Bighorn. And we ended up finding like a super easy, no crazy, not even technical at all, hardly, down climb back down to the ridge. And I'm sitting there thinking, I can't believe we just did that last night. Whatever we did last night, I can't believe we did that. We could have gone up just ridge proper, and it would have been so much easier. Yeah, and so after that, I wasn't worried. I was like, yeah, man, this thing, we're just going to have walking around the world again at this point. I mean, like I said earlier, I got nothing else to do today. I'm past the part where I was like kind of worried about. Now we're chilling.
Yeah.
So let's keep going.
And what I said prior, like, because nobody had done the double before, you were on your own time, right? You weren't really aware of what others have been doing, and so you know in the back of your head, even if you measure yourself against them and saying, okay, I can be way faster or I will definitely be slow, right? You don't really feel like you need to be done at a certain time other than the weather incoming, right?
Other than the weather.
Yeah, and so that frees you to really be in this flow and be there for yourself. And You're not really comparing. You don't play the math game in a sense, right?
Yeah, there wasn't much of a math game. Playing like the math against the weather game was kind of there, and I was like, maybe or maybe not going to beat it. It was kind of iffy still. It was really close. And we'll get to that at the finish. But, yeah, there was not really much of a rush. I was just keeping this. It ended up being the exact same pace the next lap. It was a 32-hour pace again. And it got slower and then faster and slower. But, like you said, it wasn't me racing anybody besides myself and just keeping it at a nice aerobic pace and just being able to learn and take in all these lessons. Because this was my biggest effort. The WURL, number one, was my biggest effort. And then I just went and did it again, And so, like, it was really like a learning ground for me to learn all these new things, like what works nutrition-wise, like with these short naps, how I can refocus my mind and just pacing and eating and drinking and the whole 9 yards,
Yeah, I don't know if you clued into the kind of the professional trail running, but Kilian Jornet just won UTMB, and he wrote on Instagram that these ultra races, efforts are essentially, it's entirely about eating. It's all about how you can fuel yourself with calories to prevent your body from breaking down. And
100%.
Right? And so that's really key part. So for you, with no aid stations and just relying on these caches, what did you eat? What is the food that works for you? And given the fact that it was sort of the biggest effort, did what you had planned prior, did that work out for you?
Yeah, man. Like I said, it was learning grounds for me. So about a month before that, I went out on a big unsupported mission, and I carried a bunch of stuff. It was a 40-mile route, 20K, 34 peaks. I made it 3/4 of the way. I couldn't eat after hour 4 or 5. So I went 15 hours without eating anything. Learned a lot of lessons. And so this one was like my opportunity to, try out a bunch of new things and see what works. We had beef jerkies. We had Fritos for like a crunchy taste. We had a little bit of candy, like the little Andes chocolate mint candy things, They were awesome. We had Nom, which is one of my nutrition sponsors. It's like a liquid calorie. A lot of Nom, a lot of Gnarly, because Nom doesn't have the non-caffeinated yet. So I do like non-caffeinated liquid calories. We had a bunch of Gnarly. And then at both Cardiff Pass and Firehorn, we had the Peak to Refill or Peak to Fuel, like dehydrated foods. And so both mornings I had like a granola cereal type of thing. And then one night we had a chicken Alfredo bag. And so just trying out different things. At Snowbird, we had a sandwich, a roast beef sandwich and like a Coke, And so a couple Cokes along the way, some candies, some Fritos, some beef jerky, a lot of the honey stingers. We had a lot of stroop waffles. Probably ate more stroop waffles than anything else because they were easy. And I know that they worked for me in the past. So I did a lot of those. But yeah, I got to try a bunch of different things and, never had any stomach issues.
Yeah, that's good. That's really good, and it's a good variety and a combination of stuff that you ate, right? You weren't focusing just on like 60 gels, right? You sort of allowed yourself to be broad because it's a physical aspect, but it's also the mental aspect, right? You need sort of your brain to like, oh, this is crunchy, oh, this is sweet, right? You need sort of this variation.
Exactly.
Well, cool. So the weather. When did it hit you? When did you meet it? When did it meet you?
Oh man. So we're getting around, I just finished going through night 3. Didn't have a headlamp on night 3. My crew forgot to charge. So me and my next pacer, I had another pacer join me, new person, never met. Me and him shared a headlamp all night, almost all night, until another person that I never met showed up with Wendy's, and we kept hiking and, talking and chatting and doing our thing. And we get around to Catherine's Pass where the sun is coming up for the 3rd time of this adventure. And, we're really trying to find a pacer for the last technical stretch. By the time I get to that stretch, I'll have been awake for like 58 or 60 hours. And so I didn't want to do it by myself. And I had a real hard time finding anybody. I found pacers the entire way. Someone that would want to be there the entire way until this last section. I couldn't find anybody that wanted to do it or could do it. People wanted to do it. People have real lives, though. They have to work, So that was a struggle. And sure enough, we're like maybe 4 or 5 miles away from Cardiff Pass right before the last push. And we called Jason. We're like, hey, man, what do you think about pacing me through the last section of the WURL? And Jason's like, oh, don't even worry about it, man. I was already planning on it. I already got all my stuff ready. And so the stoke is just so high. Jason, I haven't seen Jason in 24 hours. And he's like getting ready to come through the last section with me. After his body is beat like a drum, his stoke was high. He was refueled, ready to rock. And it was sick. We showed up to Cardiff Pass, and like my spirit's super high. I'm like, oh, look who it is. And we're having our bullshit conversations, and I'm stoked, he's stoked, Joe's stoked, everybody's stoked. Everybody's stoked. And this is like probably 58 hours into my adventure. I've been awake for 58 hours. Crazy enough, I was mentally intact, had no problems going on. I was completely focused, knew exactly where I was, what I was doing. I wanted to be there. I loved every step of it. We're heading up Superior, me and Jason. We're like, all right, bye, Joe, who's like our crew chief dad or whatever. I'm like, see you later, man. And we head up Superior, and we look up, and there's just big dark clouds. I'm like, oh shit, here we go. It's about to get interesting.
Mm-hmm.
This is where it all starts, man. And so we get up Superior.
How many miles from finish are you? Just to give people
about 10 and a half to 11.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's pretty far away.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
It took us 8.5 hours to get there from the starting line. And so we knew we had at least 8.5 to 9 hours. And we're just seeing clouds starting at the very beginning. And so we get to the top of Superior and it starts to sprinkle. We're like, oh shit, it's going to rain. And it starts to rain. And we're down climbing off of Monte Cristo, which a lot of people consider the crux of the route, which for some reason I don't think we really had any troubles on. I don't know if there was really a crux ever, besides the one place we didn't have to go up on Bighorn. But we're coming down this rock, and it's super slick now because it's been raining for like maybe 20, 30 minutes. Jason's pushing a pace much faster than I've been going so we can keep this before, like so we can beat the weather that's potentially still coming. We could see the weather windows spreading out. Like we knew this rain was going to hit us. It hit us. No thunder, no lightning. It went away. And so we're cruising along the Cottonwood Traverse. Our friend Eli, the owner of Gnarly Nutrition, shows up. He comes and helps out for the rest of it too. He pretty much lets me drink all of his water, all of his electrolytes, eat all of his food. The dude actually gives me his shirt off his back because I was so warm in my sun hoodie. I was like dying. It was so hot. I felt like I was back in Texas. And yeah, man, I mean, we didn't have any more weather until we get to the trailhead. Right when we get to the finish, on-site downpour, lightning striking the ridges everywhere. It was like perfect timing. It couldn't have been any more perfect timing besides that.
Yeah.
It's pretty awesome.
That is absolutely incredible.
It was cool.
Yeah. No, that is super
Jason
cool.
was stoked. I was stoked. Everybody was stoked, man. It was really cool. And we took it took us a while. Jason was super on top of it though. He route finded the whole way back through the Cottonwood Traverse, found every little piece that we needed to go down. So all I had to do was think about walking and using my hands. I didn't have to think about route finding or anything crazy. Just keep going pretty much. And by that time it's like 62 hours. I'm starting to kind of get like, all right, I'm done talking type of vibes, I'm not saying much. Him and Eli are having a conversation, great conversation. I'm listening to the conversation, piping in every little once in a while, but just kind of trying to keep it all together. Really, really digging deep into the stuff that I've never really experienced, especially being awake that long. Before that, the longest I've been awake is probably 24 hours. So I'm like close to tripling that, and it was awesome. I really enjoyed it, man. It was really, like I said, a learning ground for what I know I could do. I knew I could do these things, and it was like a proving stage to me that it's like, yeah, obviously you're doing the right thing,
Yeah. I mean, this is fascinating as somebody who grew up with mountain stories, from the original mountaineering, right, trying to scale the Eiger North Face, to Mount Everest without oxygen, and then rock climbing in Yosemite. And we are now at a phase where sort of these mountain adventures are something new and something different. And we, all the main objectives have been done. And if you want to push it, you push yourself into a risk scenario, going free soloing or whatever, right? Or where, you can do it, but very few people come back if they keep doing it over and over again, right? And this adventure that you have just done and that Jason is doing is such an interesting interplay, because you are not completely in the most remote areas. You are not on the most craziest terrain. And yet you're having this absolutely incredible adventure where you're rallying your tribe, where you're bringing your people together, right? And you have a completely unique story. And I find it super fascinating that the mountains continue to provide this stoke, this adventure, this inspiration, these new ways
it's
of
new.
Right? It is new.
It's really cool. And that's one of the things me and Jason's had conversation on, including Nathan and Travis. I think you just talked with Travis recently, like the stuff they're doing and these massive mountain peak lists and doing them as fast as possible and linking up as many peaks as possible. And that's been, people have been doing it, but it's starting to become more of a thing. And we're trying to be, in a sense, like a pioneer of showing people that these things are possible. You can go out and do massive missions in the mountains and be okay if you want to be, and if you do it the right way, with any of these peak link ups, it's just different. The trail racing has been around for so long. People love it. People will do their thing, and there's people that are already the best at it. If I started running Western States, I can almost tell you right now, I will never be the fastest person at that. But with this mountain adventure stuff, it's just a new level of playing field, and it's really fun to bring it to light and show people that bigger things are possible if you put your mind to it, and if you just want to go for it, that's the whole idea about this, is to hopefully inspire other people that they can get out and do big things if they want to do big things, or do bigger things than they've ever done, at least, Maybe not everybody can go out and do a double whirl, but someone can at least get inspired to go do a whirl, something they might have never thought about, or a half a whirl, or just go tag some peaks. And so it's really cool. And the way Jason's been doing it for so long, by so long, like maybe a decade, he's done a lot of really big stuff. And it's now getting brought to light more so than in the past. And it's really cool. It's been inspiring for me and a lot of other people. And that's just kind of where we're just all feeding off each other's energy in a sense, just you go do something big, I'll do something big, and we'll just talk.
Yeah. And there is a sort of a little bit of a pioneering kind of spirit there, right? Where the world has existed, but not for that long, and the mountains have existed, and the mountains have been climbed for decades. But linking this up and sort of finding these new routes is a true. Yeah, there is something new there. That there's something that sparks that makes people think. About I'm super fascinated by this, and because you start, your brain starts thinking like, well, where are the mountains around me, and has anybody linked them, and how can they be linked, right, and stuff, right, and so you can create complete new routes and new stories.
Yeah, man, it's just you're living new adventures that people haven't lived yet. Yeah, people have done the whirl, and someone will do the double whirl again, and someone will do it again. But it's like, going out and doing like what Jason just did, Norman's 13, or like what Norman's 13 with the extra human powered 14ers all in one push. Come on now. And then like what Travis just did, the SPS 247 as well as Nathan, who did it right before him. Like, it's just putting out a new aspect of how fast can these things be done? Where can you do them? Why do you want to do them? And, like for us, it's really about, at least for myself, and I know me and Jason have had similar conversations. It's really about bringing these stories back to the people that potentially want to go out and do bigger things for themselves, so they can learn something and get inspired.
Yeah. Yeah. And get inspired to follow your footsteps, or get inspired to open a map and say, what is out there, right?
What's there, man? Let's go see something.
What is something that nobody has done before? What is something that...
That's the idea. Because everybody's climbed the 14ers and, like, done all the other peaks. And, like, of course everybody's done the SPS, but has anybody done it in a year like these guys just did? It's just different, And they obviously took a very unique approach about how they did it, which was super fascinating. And that's kind of what inspired me for my next year's project. I have a similar project I'm about to put together. I'm going to try to do all the 13ers and 14ers in Colorado in a single year, which is right around 700. And so all similar fashion, linking up big mountain link ups, doing the same thing we just kind of did on the whirl, but making new ridge link ups and like, just very unique link ups, and it's very inspiring. And so it's a passion, man. Several people have asked me, so how hard was it, man? How hard was the double whirl? And, my answer, it took me a little bit to figure out, but my answer is it wasn't hard. It was, when your passion is so deep about something and you really enjoy being where you're at and doing those things, all the hard things, the hardships during the adventure are just obstacles that you get to learn how to maneuver, and you enjoy getting to learn how to maneuver them because you want to be there and you want to do these things.
Yeah. And when you're writing your own story, then things will just feel so much easier than if you're just walking in somebody else's footsteps, right? I mean, you need people like Jason to spark the inspiration, right? You need people to sort of help you along the way, right? But it is sort of you're writing your story, and I think that there is something very empowering there, and that's freeing up energies that you never knew existed within you, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's amazing. I'm super fascinated with this time that we are in, where all of a sudden, I think this excitement can happen outside of Yosemite Valley, outside of the Himalayas, right? I mean, we've sort of defined this is where cool mountain stories are written. And I'm like, guess what? Mountains are everywhere. You can write.
Everywhere. There's potential everywhere.
Exactly.
There's just endless amount of adventure if you want to go out and get it. There's always something new to do.
That's amazing. Thank you for sharing your story, Christopher. It's absolutely incredible. You're the first person who does the out and back WURL. What did Jared Campbell say?
He was pretty stoked. He commented on my post and was like, "Hey man, this has been talked about for some years now, but no one's done it until you. And I'm really, glad that someone's finally put it out there. And, I would like to talk more with you about it. And so maybe we'll connect one day in person and chat about it, which would be super sick. I'd love to talk to the guy, pick his brain, and, my gratitude to him for putting this route together for people like us that want to go do these things. It's awesome, man. Like, I can't thank him enough, and the people that have laid the path before me. There's a lot of incredible people. I get out and do the WURL and other things as well. And so just like watching these stories and everybody else doing their thing, it's mad inspiring.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, what better ways to finish this off? This was super inspiring. It was really great to kind of hear your story and kind of crawl a little bit into your experience and the way you see the world. I very, very much appreciate it.
Yeah, dude, I really appreciate you having me on the show. It was a lot of fun to chat with you and, get to explain the story in a different way to somebody else. Really hoping someone else, goes out and does the double WURL.
There we go.
20 hours faster than me.
There we go. I mean, we've clearly heard that there's room for improvement, right? I mean,
there's lots of room.
If you plan it out well, you need a good team and you plan out well and,
and maybe go learn the route first.
that would really, really help. And find a good weather window.
Yeah.
Well, fantastic. Because thank you so much for coming on Singletrack.
Of course, dude. Happy to be here.